The White House has announced a new package of military weapons it will be sending into Ukraine. CBS News' Natalie Brand has the details.
President Biden spoke to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky as the administration details its latest defense assistance package for the war-torn country. The U.S. is sending new weapons, including artillery and armored personnel carriers, ahead of the anticipated Russian offensive on eastern Ukraine.
We tailored this list specifically to meet the needs that they have asked for with respect to what's going on in eastern Ukraine.
Russians are focusing their airstrikes on Mariupol and the Donbas region as they stage ground forces for a renewed push.
They are now in Belarus and/or Russia, refitting, resupplying.
The Pentagon says there are indications that Russian forces continue to have significant morale issues. President Biden, for the first time this week, called Russia's actions in Ukraine genocide, but also alluded to the international legal process that would make the formal determination.
We are engaged in a process at this very moment to work with partners around the world, but in the first instance, our Ukrainian partners, to help them collect, to preserve, to document, and to share evidence of atrocities, potential war crimes, and yes, if that threshold, that legal threshold is reached, genocide.
The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe released a report finding evidence Russia committed war crimes in Ukraine, including directly targeting civilians and medical facilities, as well as rape, executions, looting, and forced deportations of civilians to Russia. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay joins me now for more. Chris, it's great to see you. President Putin spoke about Russia's offensive in Ukraine Tuesday during a press conference alongside Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. And he said the, quote, special military operation is going as planned, but that the reason it's not going faster is to minimize a loss of life. Based on your reporting and what you're seeing, is there any indication that that's true?
Well, it could be true because he has suffered so many casualties up until this point. I mean, thousands of Russian troops have been killed or wounded. I mean, basically immobilized and removed from the fight. According to some military analysts, up to 30% of Russian troops in this war have already been taken out of the fight. I mean, that is just an astronomical number. To put it in perspective, you have to go back to the Civil War and look at Robert E. Lee's troops, the general of the Confederacy, to see anything that comes remotely close to that, at least in American conflict. So it could absolutely be the case that he's had an awakening and realizes that his current tactics simply aren't working. To go back to that other point about things going according to plan, that just seems hard to believe, unless, of course, his plan was always to treat his own troops as cannon fodder.
Right. And your team was shown the site of an alleged war crime in Havrashina, a suburb of Kyiv. So obviously Putin's having some effect. So tell us about what happened there and what you saw.
Well, we saw the aftermath of a horrific event. It was a Volkswagen Coupe, a family car that was escaping from the conflict around Kyiv. A family of at least 5 people, 2 children in the back seat of the car, a teenager and a 2-year-old. Everybody on board except for the father who was driving was killed. We saw the shoes of the toddler. We saw the stroller in the back seat. The car was just ripped apart by high-caliber rounds. We were told they were explosive rounds coming from a Russian armored vehicle. And we were shown this car by an eyewitness, a farmer, because it happened right at his doorstep. He went up to the vehicle initially to try and save anybody who was on board, but when he realized it was too late, he went on to bury these bodies. And then once Russians had left the area, he approached Ukrainian forces to tell them about what happened, and then went back with those Ukrainian forces to exhume the bodies from the grave that he dug himself. This man was shaken beyond belief. He was very moved on camera, but it just shows you what goes into these investigations into war crimes. We were also there with a Ukrainian lawmaker who had come out to see for himself, and he said that there are at least hundreds of cases like these around the country, and they're going to take years, if not decades, to bring those responsible to justice.
And I think it also begs the question that so many people are wondering, which is how far Putin is willing to go. And we've been hearing a lot in the past days about the possibility that Russia has already used chemical weapons in Mariupol. Can you tell us where those claims originated and how they are being investigated?
Well, those claims originated from the alleged victims of those chemical weapons attacks, which are Ukrainian forces fighting tooth and nail. And so as to whether or not or how well these claims are being investigated, we were told by this same Ukrainian lawmaker today, they're simply not being investigated beyond anecdotal observations. These are troops who are fighting for their lives right now, coming under incessant fire. The entire city of Mariupol is under siege. Parts of it have already been captured. So they simply don't have time, not to mention the resources to perform any kind of chemical analysis. They don't have laboratories. So we're just taking their word from it. But we do know that the Russian separatists, or rather I should say pro-Russian separatists, in that same area of the Donbas, where Mariupol is located, they've threatened to use chemical weapons in precisely this type of situation in order to flush out those stalwart, die-hard members of the Ukrainian forces who simply refuse to go out quietly.
And we've also been hearing about this distinction between retreating and redeployment. Is there anything you can tell us about Russia's supposed redeployment to the eastern part of Ukraine?
Right. Well, that absolutely appears to be the case. Vladimir Putin says that he's taking his troops, the ones that had been around this part of Ukraine, in and around Kyiv, and he's moving them to eastern Ukraine. In fact, satellite imagery reinforces that. Some footage on the ground from citizens showing these long phalanxes of Russian artillery, some of them miles and miles long, heading towards the Donbas. So that indeed does appear to be the new theater of war, and it opens up what Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has called a new chapter that could open up new horrors of this war, because it's bringing the war to a place of head-to-head combat. And up until now, we've seen Russian troops moving into densely populated areas, which has absolutely led to a lot of civilian casualties, but it's also allowed Ukrainian forces to defend themselves using guerrilla tactics, hiding behind buildings, hiding in trees, taking out Russian tanks who are lined up. Now they're going to be in open fields, going toe-to-toe with Ukrainian forces, and they're also going to be much closer to Russia itself. That makes it a lot easier for them to resupply, to get more ammunition, to get more food, to organize logistics. So definitely gives the Russians an advantage that they haven't had up until this point.
Right, because they've been lacking in many of those things you just listed. Chris Livesay in Ukraine, thank you so much for all of your reporting.
Thanks for having me.